Hello, good evening, Dr. Sachin. Welcome.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for joining. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure. No,
Yes, Akshit, are you there? Akshit? Akshit?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yeah, we'll be starting a couple of minutes.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Sachin, good evening. Yes, Kalpesh, good evening. This is Maris here.
Yes, yes, good evening. Good evening. Yes, yes.
hello, Mary, sir.
Am I
Good
visible?
evening.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening video.
Okay.
Yeah, today even my internet is fluctuating.
Am I
So,
visible?
no.
Technical
It's a
glitch.
video problem.
Uh, in fact, today
Let me check
I
it.
myself not having very good internet today. Yeah,
My
Mary
video.
Sports, sir, you are visible.
Okay.
So, how are you? How's are things?
Yeah, going on, sir. Going on.
Okay.
Sir, shall I start?
Yeah, you can start. People will
Just
keep
a
joining.
minute.
Yeah, over to you.
Sure, sir. Good evening, respected guests, faculty members, and fellow participants. Welcome to day 9 of the 10-day online capacity building program on disability laws, jointly organized by Pro Bono India and GNLU Center for Disability Studies, Gujarat National Law University. I am Akshit, a second year law student from HNLU Raipur, your moderator for this evening session, and I am delighted to open today's dialogue on accessing accessibility in India. To frame our discussion, I would like to share a quote of Deborah Rowe to capture the spirit of our work. Accessing accessibility allows us to tap into everyone's potential. It is my privilege to introduce our distinguished guest, Doctor Sachin Sharma, Associate Professor of Law at Himachal Pradesh National
Yeah,
University,
I think,
Simla.
Akshit, I think I was introduced already, so it's fine. We can proceed.
Sir, sir. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sharma, sir, to lead us through this pivotal conversation on making India's laws, institutions, and public space truly accessible for all. Sir, the virtual stage is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you once again for the organizers, Kalpesh sir and Mary sir, for giving me the opportunity to interact with you on second time on this capacity building program. So I am, a bit curious to. I will think by now, because now we are towards the end of the entire program. So I think we have really built the capabilities or capacity in terms of understanding disability, and that is the reason I, preferred talking about accessibility, particularly, where in context of laws, in context of the existing system, policies, so on and so forth. So I want this session to be bit, interactive rather than just one monological expression or monologue based expression. So is it okay, Kalpesh sir, then if we have a bit of interaction while, deliberating?
Yes, yes, yes,
So
definitely. Yes.
yeah, thank you so much, because that's why I'm not sharing the PPT. I'll send the slides to Kalpesh sir later, because other day when I shared the PPT, I was unable to see any text, any, question, any comment on the side. So if later it requires, I'll send, but it will be more of a generic today. So when we talk about accessibility, so can anyone tell me a bit about that? What we mean by accessibility? What is the need for accessibility or its significance in a very basic, generic manner? And then we'll come to disability. So I'm saying in generic sense, for all of us, how do we understand, accessibility. So can anyone please? So at least I'll get the idea from there, that what you have learned till now, or what are the understandings. Because what is the purpose, ultimate purpose of this capacity building program is, to get the awareness, the sensitization, and it's not about just knowing the text of the law or knowing the existing laws, policies, but it's more about our own understanding, because if we are unable to understand things, then it's difficult for us to really make the law implementing, so that's why I'm asking. But I think there is one hand raise, I guess. So if Ranjini, if you want to say something, like how do you define or what do you mean by accessibility?
Yeah, good evening, sir. According to me, accessibility means how far it is reachable. How far can you reach it? If in need, how fast and how quick can you reach it? How much is it
Okay.
available to you?
So it is in kind of a enabling right, it means. So it is like something which enables you to reach, to access something,
Right,
So
right.
if you don't, thank you so much. Thank you for your response. So yes, exactly. So when we talk about accessibility, I name it as a basic right, So I think we all have studied constitutional laws, and we are aware about the fundamental rights and other things, So when we do the classification there, so we used to classify this as a, there are certain rights are called basic rights, and then there are something called fundamental. So there are possibilities that all basic rights might not be recognized as fundamental rights, or other way around, So when we talk about, for instance, accessibility, so it is something, a basis, which facilitates your all other rights. So be it right to life with dignity, be it, the right regarding equal opportunities, be it in employment, in education, and service, and of course access to different places, enjoying all your right. In fact, during my PhD, I tried working on sexual consent, sexuality part component, and tried investigating it from the lens of accessibility. So if the places are not accessible for people with disability, how this gonna impact on their rights? So this is the idea, and that is the reason that when this UNCRPD was, we drafted, and when this whole debate started, so idea was very much focused on accessibility. In fact, if you read the law closely, so UNCRPD Article 9 of the convention, it specifically talks about right to, accessibility, and it, if I read it, it says, the opening line is that to enable person with disability to live independently and participate fully, so that's why I said it is an enabling right, it is a facilitative right. So it enables us, or a person with disability, to live independent and participate fully. Because if we are able to live independently and participate fully in the society or in our decision making things, or be it a political participation, be it social participation, then only we'll able to enjoy our right to life with dignity, or your right to equality. And it says that this right of accessibility must be ensured to people with disability on equal basis with others, related to their physical environment. It includes transportation, it also includes information, communication, and so many things. And particularly when we are talking about the accessibility in the digital age, in the age of AI and in the age of digitalized world, it became more and more impactful and sensitive, that do we have these facilities. If you remember, if you can recall from my earlier talk on the previous day, so there I tried focusing on certain examples. I was sharing with you those examples which are to accessibility in say in particular, so where I was giving you examples of websites, you know, the way websites are being designed, so are they really following the accessibility guidelines which has been issued, you know, related to designing of your website, the kind of content it say it you know, fluctuates or it reflects. And similarly these other, you know, app, today you see everything is available on in the click of your phone, but whether do we have all these, you know, facilities accessible to all of us? In fact, I have attended one of program last year in Bangalore. It's a basically a program on accessible India campaign, you know, so they were just doing a kind of a critique to this, that how effectual accessible India campaign is, or how far we have reached, you know. So what the primary stakeholders holders were bringing to the platform or to the table was that despite having laws, despite having policies, still there is a lack of, you know, that implementation vis-a-vis that awareness among people. And then when we say people, it includes both people with disabilities, without disabilities, as well as the other stakeholders, including the you know, the bureaucrats and related people. So idea is about that accessibility issue, that if it is not accessible to you, how do we able to live our right to life, our right to equality, you know? So if we don't have that reasonable understanding, or you know, reasonability about interpreting or understanding this issue, so henceforth it is said that accessibility is always a first argument, first issue, not a afterthought. So you need to think about it right the beginning, and accordingly you need to think about these ideas. So continuing on the UNCRPD Article 9, it further says that state parties shall take measures, you know, certain measures in order to eliminate all obstacles and barrier to accessibility, you know, and it includes both physical and, you know, virtual barriers. So it includes the buildings, accessible buildings, roads, transportation, indoor outdoor facilities, school, housing, medical facilities, and many other things. Your workplace, similarly, your information communication, you know, other electronic services, emergency services. So these things need to be, it says, barrier free. So this is what the basis of Accessible India campaign, you know, Sugam Bharat, you know, Abhiyan. So that the idea is that where we may able to make the surroundings friendly, you know. So there is this idea of universal designing, that you must have a universal, you know, design, as in a design of infrastructure or any other such thing of such a way, in such a manner, that which can be accessed or used by anyone, irrespective of their disability or not, or otherwise. But still you see we are still, you know, lacking on that universal designing approach. So though we try talking about accessible building, construction of ramps and so many things, but when we see the universal accessibility issue, still you can, you know, bifurcate, you can differentiate. So if there is a ramp, so there it is for people on wheelchair or for people with disabilities, but for others you have staircases, you know, stairs in that building. So that is not universal. Universal is a common platform which can be accessed by anyone, everyone. This is about inclusivity. So this is also important for us to think that the existing model of accessibility or laws related to accessibilities are whether they promoting inclusion or whether they are exclusion based, you know. Because what we are demanding, what like we as a people with disability are demanding, the dignified treatment, inclusive environment, you know. But does accessible model or the laws or the policies are really inclusive? So this is the fundamental question, you know. You're talking about integration, but are we really at the same time talking about inclusion when we are talking about inclusivity? So here comes the role of universal design, So I gave you that example that in a building, at one corner you have a ramp for people with disability, and on the other side or in the middle of that building, center place, you have stairs. So if I am a person on wheelchair, I have to use that corner side. So does it bringing me inclusion? That is the question, So this is what we have to argue. And similarly, when we talk about accessibility in terms of education, so when we talk about inclusive education, so do we really have inclusive education? Because new education policy, if you see this national education policy 2020, it talks about people with disability, it talks about inclusion in a way, but at the same time it talks about special school for students with disabilities, or people with disabilities. So at one point of time you are talking about accessible inclusive environment, at the same time you are talking about segregated environment, that special school. So this is something, a technical argument, a basic problem when we talk about implementation of accessibility. So that's why the title of today's talk is assessing the accessibility. So let us assess that whether the existing platforms, models are really inclusive or not. So if you see the background to the accessibility policies or laws, be it in India or be it under UNCRPD, that Convention on Person with Disability, So as I said, there is this journal comment number 2. Okay, so this journal comment number 2, it talks about, or particularly about, focuses on accessibility. It says that accessibility is a precondition for a person with disability to live independently and participate fully and equally in society. Again, the similar argument what Article 9 says. And it says that without access to the physical environment or transportation or information communication, technology, etc., or other related facilities, for people with disability would not have equal opportunities. So this is the idea. Now you talk about the responses in India, that how things have worked. Earlier, you have already studied that you have 1995's law, then gradually it got repealed, and you have 2016 Act or law, which talks about accessibility, which talks about these things. And at the same time, you have a plethora of judicial interventions. So you have both from the high courts, various high courts, and Supreme Courts, number of judgments, almost 4 or 5 judgments in a year you can identify. All these judgments were are arguing about accessibility. So every time certain directions were issued, but never ever those directives or directions got implemented. So it's like on paper you have things, you have policies, but on practice, on the practical ground, you are unable to see the reality of the day. So as I said, when I visited certain places, so in the name of accessibility, certain wheelchairs are provided to the households, but the area is that rasta road is, or the way is they are kacha places. They don't have proper concrete ways where you can use your wheelchair. So what I observed at field, that people have just placed those wheelchairs on their terraces of their houses because they were unable to utilize them, unable to use them. So on the name of the policy and its access, the documents say tick, right, that these many people with disability you have identified and you have provided them these things. But are they really utilizing them, or whether do we have those, that mechanism, or the basic requirements which is needed for them? So if it is not there, you are still on that zero wala principle. There is no growth, no development. So henceforth, this journal comment number 2 on accessibility, it says that if you are not provide or make these arrangements, people with disability would never ever going to get equal opportunities, be it in terms of their participation in the society, And when we say participation, it include all your social participation, your political participation, your economic participation. I think in previous lecture I gave you the examples of the the world labor, that data statistics which says that people with disability, their contribution in the labor market or in the market is quite low, significantly low as compared to the other general people or general masses. The reason is very obvious, because of this lack of accessibility. You see the census on India, and now though we don't have recent update till now, but still, if you, for an example purpose, if you see 2011 census report, you see the school dropouts, the ratio, the percentage of school dropout children's. So for people or students with disability, that percentage is very, very high than the other general, percentage. So what are these indicators? These all indicators are telling us that despite having laws, despite having, papers, documents, still at the ground accessibility is nowhere. So you just imagine, like we at our university, we have some a student with disability, and because of this hill region, we don't have that accessible place, the 100% accessible environment or place to concerned individual. Now they want, or they want to shift their student to some another law school, but we don't have the policy. In fact, the other bar council is unable to address the issue. Like if a person is seeking a transfer or migration from one law school to another law school in his or her home state, and where there is a seat available, but you don't have facility, and here you have all those strict mechanisms which we follow, that you have to come to class, you have to do exams, so on, so many things. But are these things are accessible? So point is that on what ground, on what basis will able to design that accessible infrastructure? That is first important question. Okay, because since in long there are documents constantly talking about accessibility. So this is not something new issue. Like if I can give you example from this UDHR, Universal Declaration on Human Rights, it's article 13 or article 12 of International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. They directly or indirectly talks about accessible environment. It says that physical environment and public transport need to be accessible to people, which include people with disability, but since then until now, do we really made those differences? Similarly, if you see this International Convention on the Elimination of All Form of Racial Discrimination, which guarantees everyone has the equal right to access to any place or service which is intended for the general public or general use, be it transport or anything. Article 5, clause F of that International Convention on Elimination of All Form of Racial Discrimination talks about that. So what are these examples? All these examples are, are specifically indicating that since beginning there are texts, there are policies, there are laws which are talking about at international level as well as at national level, in a way, one way or another way, are focusing on accessibility. But the ground reality is, still questionable. So if you see our 2016 Act, Section 12 talks about access to justice. It says that appropriate government shall ensure that all persons with disability are able to exercise the right to access any court, tribunal, any commission, anywhere, and investigative power without discrimination on the basis of disability. But do we have accessible courtrooms? You see all across, particularly you talk about the district courts in the country, there are rare buildings, rare places, premises which are accessible. And where there is so-called accessibility is there, this is just for the sake of name, for name's sake you have provided certain arrangement, otherwise not. Like, I think I have visited so many court rooms or courts till now, but I rarely found a court is accessible. And I'm talking specifically about lower courts where you have a majority of litigations, majority people are accessing those courts. Supreme courts and high courts are still not accessible for a common people because of different reasons, be it economic or any way another. Though we talk about access to justice and equitable access to justice on paper, but in reality it's not. In fact, in my personal experiences during like interviews which I took or other way I came across, even the judicial staff are not sensitive or not aware about the 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 people with disability. In fact, I have interviewed a person, a woman with cerebral palsy. She was sexually assaulted by a person or an accused, and when in court, when she was asked to give her testimony, she was unable to speak so-called adult language because of her disability, and she was not speaking in that so-called proper language. And on this very reason, judge has, he turned down. He says that I cannot record the testimony. If you want the testimony to be recorded, it has to be in proper formal language. When for a person with cerebral palsy or with any other speaking diversity or disability who's unable to speak fluently, similarly you see the examples of people who are unable to speak and hear. There are, I believe, totally negligible percentile where you have a accessible environment. You have a sign language interpreter in the courtroom, being it from the side of a victim or from the side of a witness. You don't have that facility. In majority of places, it's the guardian or the parents, they themselves used to interpret. But from the court point of view, you don't get that accessibility. And why I'm talking about law and court rooms, because article 12 of your 2016 act, it talks about access to justice, that government should ensure that all people with disability are able to exercise that accessibility right. But in practice, it is not the case. So I'm giving you the living examples, so where a sexual assault took place and judge is now refuting to take the testimony, and which has disturbed the concerned individual, so much that their parents or the family, they refuse to visit the court again. And on one way we are talking about access to justice. Similarly, there are many other such cases. In previous class, or in previous session, I talked about a case on Suchitra Srivastava versus Chandigarh administration. There also I told you all about the same issue or the same attitude from the judiciary side, that no one is bothering about the concerned individual's consent. Simply why? Because that person is having certain mild socio-psycho disabilities or mental disabilities. So you're simply negating the entire process. Till today, you see in the places in, like, you have these rehabilitation centers, but the entire discourse is been one way around. It is only from that one perspective. In previous session, that's why I talked you about these issues, that there is two models which are still prevalent in disability interpretations or policy making things. It is like best interest model, that where someone else is deciding in the best interest of that concerned individual, and another model is about the your will and preference model. I mentioned these two things in previous session, but no one is concerned about this will and preference. No one is bothering about the will of a concerned individual, or what is her or his preference, what they are preferring. It's in the interest, in the best interest, and which is economically soothing to the concerned system or suitable to the concerned system. So that is the reason, if you talk to people with disability and activists particularly with disability, so that's why they tell us the ground realities. They say, okay, on paper you have so many things, but the there is another side of the coin, and which is totally about the problems. So that's why, if you see, the other day also I was mentioning about this idea, I mentioned about Michel Foucault other day. So it's about that you create a kind of a normality, a kind of a normal and system environment which we think it is a normal, and this so-called normal is based on particular standard. So same is the case with the accessibility, that when we talk about accessibility, we talk it in terms of certain standardization. But do we really follow the, it, the idea of equitable participation? Do we really practice these ideas, those inclusive, ideas? Because real inclusion is only and only possible if there is a compossibility, if there is a continuous dialogue and equitable participation. So I recommend you to go through a paper. There is a paper titled as Ladder of Citizens Participation, by Sherry Ernstein. Okay, Ladder of Citizen Participation. If you can Google it, you will get the paper. Even you get the Google image of that. In that paper, author talks about a ladder of citizen participation. So which includes, the initial ladders are about manipulation and all these things, manipulation. Then you have tokenism, and then towards up at the ladder, you'll have the real participation. So author primarily tells that though we are talking about laws which are based on the equitable participation, but there is not a real participation. It is just manipulated either, or it is like a tokenism. Just for the namesake, you took people on board, but everything is pre-decided, preconceived, and accordingly you do. That paper is very, very powerful and popular paper of Sherry Ernstein. So if you see that idea and connect from there on this existing accessibility idea, it tells you exactly the same, that just for the namesake things are there, but at reality it's not. So henceforth, when we are assessing accessibility, you have very crystal clear examples and arguments which tells us that despite having these many laws, your accessibility is still questionable, it's still problematic. You forget about rural India. Even in your urban India, you don't have places, which are all places which are inclusive, which are accessible. Still you follow that segregated practices, environments. So henceforth, the the opening line of accessibility, that it brings independence, that got compromised. So henceforth, in majority of cases, people with disability, they are bound to be dependent, either on their family members or any other help. So there is no that free access. It's still a very foreign expression. That, but point is that can there is a possibility of transformation, where we really understand the inclusion, we really understand this whole idea of equitable participation and social inclusion. So this is possible only and only if the all stakeholders of the society, they can participate, they can understand and and deliberate on these issues. But it's not the case. In last lecture also, I gave you, so the background of this today's talk is been framed in the previous lecture itself, where I gave you even examples there that when we do the hostel allocation to students, in majority of universities, in majority of places, what we do, we prefer ground floor to students with disabilities, and there is continuous segregation, you know. So it's like students with disability, they will be allotted rooms at the ground floor, and the entire batch or the entire class is on some another floor. So there is no possibility, there is, you know, no interaction even within their own peers, you know? So is this an inclusion? You just imagine the environment that where you are a part to the class, but you don't know anyone around there, and you are bound to live alone. Even in the classroom, when everyone is sitting together, you feel that aloofness because of that disconnect. Though on paper, what we say, ki 5% affirmative action has been practiced. You know, that's what your equality jurisprudence says. But the reality is the other side. So that's why that tokenism wala idea, you know, you just want document, right? You know, every university has this NAC criteria. Na? You have to do NAC gradation, and for that, these days you have accessible campus ka certain marks, what facilities you do, uska marks. So on paper, everything is there, but in practice, if you see, if you ask the concerned individual, they really feel depressed. They always feel, you know, kind of a segregated, left out, and this ultimately triggers them in various other issues related to their psychological well-being. So henceforth, we have to understand that the so-called welfare model which we follow, or the whole approach we follow, it is not giving a central stage to a concerned person with disability. So still we follow that mainstream, you know, every time we want एक excluded individual को mainstream में डालना. But why I don't want to become the so-called mainstream? Why I myself become a mainstream का part, or वो mainstream, so-called mainstream become मेरा part, you know? So it could be other way around. So we always say कि they need to do these things so that a person can join the mainstream. But वो mainstream क्यों नहीं वो individual को join करती है? You know, is this a idea about equality? You know, and of course, when we talk about public employment, as one comment I got, so वो मैंने आपको example बताया on education, accessibility and education, and I give you live examples on that. You know, where that on the paper you got things, but the job is half done. You know, same comes when we talk about employment sector. You know, in employment sector, even today, you know, service law, we all follow service law, but service law nowhere specifically talks about any specific arrangement for people with disability. In all public employment sector, we are supposed to, like, someone is supposed to write our APAR, appraisal form, or that kind of performance things. But that is done on a very mechanical basis. So it's like on a very mechanical basis, you decide or you judge whether a person is capable or not. Still you feel the discrimination. You see the laws. You talk about the public employment, how many people with disabilities are holding the top positions in our public sector or even in private sector. Rare examples are there. It's like the same issue with when we talk about any vulnerable section, for that matter, that rare examples you'll find, where you, like, we all are associated with academics or with universities. So you just talk about how many universities, vice chancellors or directors are people with disabilities. So it's questionable. And when we talk about multiple disability in a ways, so that ratio almost it goes down. So when we talk about people with visual impairment, visual disabilities, I was shocked to know, just I guess last year Assam government has, you know from the governor side, they issued a notified ek, you know uh, public notice. They, though later I guess they withdrawn it, but there was this public notice. It must be with me on my cell phone. Someone has shared this with me. It categorically says that people with visual impairment or with other specific disabilities are not preferable for judicial services. This is a notification coming from a state government. Although since these many examples you have there is this this association for visually impaired people, in the Nagpur based association, they filed a case long ago talking about giving opportunity to write IS exam or any competitive exam. So provide that basic facilities where people with visual impairment can write exams, but despite that, despite those things, I'm giving you this example that where judiciary के लिए you are coming up with a notification and putting certain limitations there. For so and so disability not preferable. In fact, in last class also. So that's why I'm saying that on paper your constitution says that there shall not be any discrimination on any these grounds that include disability, and you need to provide them a reasonable accommodation within the review of Article 16 of the Constitution when it comes to the employment. But the factual position is very, very different. So in fact, other day also I was telling you the example. You name places where you'll get people with disabilities, including visual disabilities, where they got employment. It's not there. Service law nowhere supports the entire discourse. Though on the other side of the coin, laws are there, policies are there, judgments are coming regularly, but the factual situation remains the same. So in fact, in my classes I used to talk about this John Rawls. There is this philosopher, American philosopher John Rawls. So he gives this very beautiful critique to the affirmative action. He says that what we do through affirmative action, we are picking a person from a bottom line, a vulnerable person. He gives this example of a malnutritious person or a student who is a person who is a malnutritious. You're picking him from that bottom line and you're asking him to run a marathon race with the trained athletes. So he says that, is this a fairness? Is this a fair justice? Is this a equitable justice? So similar, same example, that you are providing affirmative action, that there is a reservation in employment, there is reservation in education, there is reservation in these things, but do we really provide the basic facilities where a person can access the things? So that is the something very, very important argument, that which talks about that, do we really have the real commitment in terms of implementing the laws? Because as per what Rawls says is very logical. He says that affirmative action hai, but in reality is it functional? So you're providing that reservation, but is it really accessible, that it makes things accessible to that concerned individual? That is the problem, that is the idea. Because and still we are concerned with that same stereotypical stigmatic approach. So henceforth there is need to have this paradigm shift, and these laws, be it Indian laws on with Disability Act, or the UN laws like UNCRPD, are talking constantly about these issues, but the practical scenario remains the other side, other way around. You see, Accessible India campaign, it was introduced in 2015, I believe, you know. So from 2015, now it is 2025, you know, almost 10 years are there. Still, you don't see the accessible places. Now these days, every place we start talking this concept of smart cities. Now our own here city, the Shimla, is been considered as a smart city, or it's been developing as a smart city. But does these so-called smart cities are, you know, concerned about people with disabilities? You know? So you have straightway guidelines, since regular guidelines from 2022 onwards on making building accessible. Accessibility guidelines are available on the government websites, you know. But do we really follow that criteria? You know, rarely we follow those things. So, and for that's why I'm saying I'm not even talking about rural areas. I'm talking even in urban areas, the government buildings or these other buildings. You know, do we have these practices? You know, so we talk about Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, but does really things become sugam to people with disabilities? So that is, you know, something which I think we have to keep in mind, that there is this constant accessibility standards, guidelines, but in reality that things remains problematic. Now coming to, if you see, as I mentioned earlier, the judicial approach or judicial, you know, idea. So there are multiple examples. I'm just citing few examples, naming certain few examples. There is this case called Integrated Disabled Employees Association versus State of West Bengal, you know. So this is 2008 case. It talks in that 2008 wale time pe that there is need to have a basic infrastructural changes. You need to introduce tactile paths for people with visual impairments, you know, and need to provide those facilities. But, you know, particularly it talked about those issues, and at the same time highlighted the economic liability wala part as well. So since 2008, even prior to that, you're talking about accessibility, you're talking about making things accessible, but do we really have that accessible, you know, environment, or things are arranged at our end? You know, you have number of cases in the name of Rajiv Rathori versus Union of India. Rajiv Rathori is a activist, you know, he filed a couple of cases on accessibility. The recent case Rajiv Rathori versus Union of India is decided on November 2024 by Justice Chandrachud, where Supreme Court took a very strict measure. It says that now onwards, if a public, you know, or employments or sectors, you know, they are unable to fulfill the accessibility guidelines, now there must be penal action must be started or initiated against them. अब से पहले तक every time Supreme Court or every other court was saying that there are, you know, constant directions, guidelines, but from this Rajiv Rathori judgment, this November 2024 judgment, court took a very strict measure, because every time it is giving a time to the government to implement the law, to implement the policies on accessibility, and every time it is not getting materialized, you know. But I'm still doubtful. Still, it gave that work to, you know, submit a report to the Supreme Court, and I'm also part of that report. It has been, you know, drafted from the Center of Disability Studies, Nalsar, you know. So I'm taking care of hill states, accessibility issues in hill states, you know. So where the idea is that if when we talk about accessibility in, you know, plain areas, things are one way, but when we talk about hill states, there are some very specific and particular challenges. Without addressing them, you cannot think of, you know, making accessible, you know, really accessible in a sense, you know. So here, where you have a hilly terrain, you cannot think of constructing a ramp. It is practically difficult, you know. So anyway, so that Rajiv Rathori judgment gives us these primary concerns that you need to make things accessible. Similarly, there is this Jyoti Singh versus Nand Kishore judgment in around, I guess, 2021, 2022. It again talks about that there must be a social disability audit, within section 48 of RPWD Act. It highlights that there are differences between social audit and access audit. So in these days, we are talking about accessible audit, but this judgment again talks about along with your accessible audit, you also need to conduct social audit. That does this inclusive environment is really making social inclusion, at that place, at that, be it a workplace or any other place. So that percentage, be it in employment, be it in education, be it in any other services, for people with disabilities representation, it's still on a very, very negligible lines. You see, we talk about we the people of India, and we include specifically women, we include children, we include majority or other stakeholders, caste, and so on and so forth. But we till now we haven't included disability, people with disability. We didn't introduce that word. We are reading it as it is a part of that article 14 ka language या 15 ka language, it's inclusion ka part, but specific name expression is not there. Even if you read the entire constitution, it's only few place, one or two place, I believe, you will find the disabled word has been used. So idea is not about that it's about segregating specification. No, it's about addressing the concern. So it's like something jo United States mein hua tha ki when they introduced their constitution, they say there is no need to have fundamental rights, unko likhne ki zarurat nahi hai, because these rights are inherent, so there is no need. So what happened, there comes this slavery, there comes the racial discrimination, it continues. So then they realize now there is a need to at least introduce these rights. So henceforth bill of rights were introduced. But uske baad bhi 100 saal baad bhi ye dekha gaya ki that even after bill of rights, even after 14th constitutional, that bill of right against आपका slavery को जो prohibit कर रहा है, and due process clause, still that discrimination wala practice is continuing, racial discrimination practice is still continuing. So that in previous class I shared one book, The Race in the Bottle. So there that example author gives that because of this discriminatory आपका एक mind setup, एक stigmatic mind setup, this is still continuing. Even if you see the crime bureau records, the punishment to black people in United States on same crime is higher than the white people. Same we can think of in India when we talk about caste line pay. So point is this idea of discrimination, it is deeply rooted in all of us. So simply making a law, textual या उस पे कोई आप interpretations करना, judgments देना, is not gonna make the kind of a shift or a change. It has to come within us, from inside us. So that is what the need of our, in fact in 2021, this Vikas Kumar versus UPSC case is there. It talks about that there is need to have a reasonable accommodation in this UPSC exam. You need to facilitate. So be it the use of scribe, be it the other facilitative arrangement, it has to be done at the end of the government, so that the inclusive equality can take place. So, and it is only possible when you make these arrangements, because if you're not able to make these arrangements, things will not gonna work. Even till today, there are a lot of public employment examinations or exams, they say that you need to bring your own scribe, or your own assistant. That particular board or that particular department will not be providing you that service. And even if they are providing, they are doing this on a very, very technical basis, which is very inaccessible for concerned individual or concerned people. So that is the idea. So if I want to conclude the entire thought, if you see the limitation side, so yes, there are a lot of limitations that despite laws, things, still you have a very insensitive approach, you know, be it at the end of the government institutions or the private institutions, still that lack of sensitivity is there, you know. So it's like everyone is bothered about themselves, तो उसी context में people do things. And most importantly, there is continuous exclusion of disabled voices, you know. So मैंने आपको already example दिए on the court में sign language interpreter का miss होना and many other things. So it's like no one is bothering on those parameters. So it's like the people with disability, they are voiceless, so someone else is speaking on their behalf. That is why that tokenism I mentioned earlier. So it's like something कि अपने interest सब fulfill कर रहे हैं, अपने number सब बनाए जा रहे हैं, but on practice, on reality, things became immaterial. So इसलिए ये कहा जाता है from the disability scholarship that until and unless people with disability start speaking, you cannot make a real change, because otherwise it will be a one way communication, and that need to be countered, that need to be questioned. And I believe only way to bring accountability and in terms of accessibility is through speaking up, is through, you know, raising questions. So but otherwise it's not, you know. So अभी तो वो होता है ना, जैसे कि we conduct programs, but I have seen majority of these programs just for photo खींचना है, so just to prepare the documentations, but in reality it's not. So that's what, like, even my request of you, like you have attended this 10-day long your, you know, CBP, disability centric discourse. So idea is that after coming out from this program, we should, you know, get that connect, that thought of sensitivity or thought of inclusion, you know, and that it must reflect in your observation, in your thinking process while you are doing your day-to-day activities. Are you able to connect to the concerned individual? You know, it's not only about getting the certification, that is, I believe, immaterial, but what is important is that are we able to continue with this thought process, and how long we'll be going to continue with this thought process. So I think that's all from my side. So yeah, thank you so much. If you have any, you know, interaction, any
Thank you,
comment,
Shir,
we can.
for
Yeah.
your enlightening session. Participants, the floor is now open for your questions. Please raise your hands or submit your question in the chat.
Okay, there are two, three questions are there in the chat box. Please, there are some discussion about the accessibility of disabled person in the public employment.
Yeah, I saw that question. I addressed that point. I talked particularly about that when we talk about public employment, that and I mentioned about the service laws, that still service law nowhere provides accommodation to people with disability when we talk about public employment or service sector A. And B, that when we talk about inclusive environment, so as I told that on paper that the reservation is there, but the accessible environment is not there. So it is all depending on that concerned individual. Like I'll give you this my own example. Like this is almost 11, 12 years of my teaching. So when I joined teaching, even till today, I ask the concerned, you know, department or the university to give me the accessibility environment. Particularly, I request them a collar mic. So there are institutions in previous institution where I served, you know, they are even unable to provide me the collar mics. So because I need that basic equipment, I can only perform, I can only give a impactful lecture in my class if I'll have that basic facilities. So what they did initially in one of my previous institute, they gave me वो हाथ में पकड़ने वाला mic. It's like कि as a politician you are addressing the guest. So my concern is to holding that mic. So it is not free, you know. So I buy my own tools, my things, and then gradually I started. Abhi recently we got funds at our university. Here we got smart room classes, smart boards. But I didn't found even a single smart board which is disabled friendly. So I can't access that board. But on paper वो सब हुआ हुआ है कि it is accessible. You have even e-newspaper जो आपका वो system which is totally inaccessible. So point is that in public employment or even in private employment, even if you get reservation, but the other side is that that environment is still not inclusive. So if it is not there, तो वो आपका वो it is a half-hearted experience. So that autonomy wala expression never comes. So there is constant fear, constant insecurity in the mind of that concerned individual that he
Definitely.
will be judged on the ground of कि उसकी performance ठीक नहीं है.
Recently, right, definitely, I think all of you might, I think some of you might have seen that video, one female teacher suffering from dwarfism. So she is standing on bench and teaching. So earlier, like I think it was a story in the Better India. So she shared
हाँ,
experience
okay.
when I started, मुझे ये problem हुई थी, लोग मुझे ऐसा देखते थे, वैसा देखते थे. So then, and then there's a video standing on bench. One of the bench she was using to write down the board. There is a like definitely after recruitment, that kind of facility should be there. Otherwise, like it would be very difficult to perform particular job.
True. And like I can read Shreya's question or comment. She says that there are multiple disabilities. So how we can ensure that it include everyone, So that's why Shreya, the answer for this is in the idea of that universal design, universal model, So in that universal design, what we primarily focus at that whatever suits me, I have that sort of arrangement. So for instance, कि जब आप एक फॉरेन में पार्लियामेंट एड्रेस कर रहे हो एंड यू डोंट नो दैट पर्टिकुलर लैंग्वेज बट यू हैव दोज डिवाइसेस व्हिच कैन ट्रांसलेट योर लैंग्वेज इमीडिएटली, तो उसी तरह से यू कैन मेक all those facilities. Now you have that advanced technologies that what we think it can be scripted on the board. So itni facilities hain. So when we have this idea of universal design, so it gives us the आइडियाज कि आप ऐसा एक एनवायरनमेंट या वर्क प्लेस बनाएं which can be accessed by everyone, be with person with disability or without disability. तो अगर वो होता है then it become a really inclusive environment. Otherwise it's like segregated some model, for me something else. So but this is a
Okay.
constant
Yes.
हमारा वो engagement चाहिए.
The
Yeah, yes.
I think last question from the my side, like I don't know about the funding issue. Funding issue will be there. Like it can be supported by CSR. So how what is the like status of funding issue related to empowerment of this all the process and CSR how it's helping to in job or wherever it's possible.
Yeah, no, with CSR, yes, definitely there are few changes and impacts are starting, but that if you see that is very minute, right, very minimum. So like in a particular state, and when we talk about that what contribution we are doing for people with disability, so there are few institution you can find out, but because CSR will never ever going to give us that replacement of a state, so the ultimate thing come from the state participation, but states always have this idea, with their funding, their these many issues, and to great extent they might have a genuine concerns, but at the same time this leads to a discriminatory practice, so
Yes,
that's why there
Sachin.
is a lack of. Yes, Mary sir.
Yeah, Sachin, if you allow me, I can come here. Actually, Kalpesh sir, why we have to think of CSR at the first instance? Even Sachin sir, this is my
Please.
question. Again, it is a kind of charity kind
No,
of
sir, I
approach.
lost my I got one call, that's why it got
No.
disconnected. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So can you please?
No. Actually, at the first instance, why we should think of CSR funding? It's again getting back to the charity model.
Yeah, yes,
Isn't
true,
it,
true. That is
Kalpesh?
also
It's a kind
Because
of
yeah, they have put up, subject to
True, exactly.
financial availability, so they
no,
can take the,
no, that's where I actually Kalpe sir, the
yeah, yeah.
financial ability
Hmm.
they put it. Again, if you look at it, if you look at the Supreme Court judgments, even the rules also they made it very clear. You cannot escape. Now,
Hmm.
there are two ways to look at it. In our project, also banking project, they say banks are claiming we are providing all services, but
Hmm.
are they issuing ATM to blind? Are they issuing? So there they will not issue. So what they say that nobody is there to approach. That way they used to show.
Hmm.
Whereas if you look at the employment, what happens? The situation in a such a way that you get the job, then you resign and go.
Hmm.
So that atmosphere they create.
Sometimes, very
True,
very
true,
basic
true.
thing we see, the like, the toilet for disabled, different able people always ताला मारा हुआ है.
Yes.
अरे भाई,
Yes.
very difficult, right? You are in, like, it's a very, emergency thing where you go and take the keys, you will request people to by kholo, then I will. So really, it's very very
Exactly.
difficult. Tala almost, I will
Difficult.
say, most of the, some of, I think, I
Hmm.
all
Except
the participants
airport,
will agree.
except
Tala
airport
mara
and
hua.
hospitals. So
Hmm.
you never find it open in other
True.
places.
I mean,
Tala
it's
mara
there.
hua,
Na?
yes.
I'm working on this project, ICSSR funded project on accessibility, and
Okay.
particularly looking at healthcare in these two states, Himachal and Uttarakhand. So till now, what all we gathered is this only. कि वही जो आप कह रहे हो, ताला मारा हुआ है. It's like rarely you find a place which is functional, though it is dedicated place or space, but there is no such, connection. And in fact, the way people approach or उनका भी approach is based on वही charity वाला model, उदया वाला model. So वो आपका autonomy is totally compromised. Individual autonomy is totally compromised, and this leads to वो continuous discrimination throughout.
Actually,
True,
few
definitely.
institutions provide a facility once the moment they approach, rather appoint any disability, okay,
Hmm.
as an employee, but not all,
Exactly.
right?
So
So
that's what now it's like what say even I saw these these nonsense comments from people. They say कि we employed him. कोई conference हो रहा है.
but
So from the
yes,
dais, the person is saying कि I employed him. अरे भाई, I got employment because of my hard work, na?
yeah,
Because of my performance. So what you are trying to do? It's like it is very derogatory, na? In fact, I objected in few places.
hmm,
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not none of you. It's I who participated, who did these things. So
yes.
you carry these things, this mindset. तो लोगों का उस तरह
No,
का एक वो है.
yes. Can they say for
Yes.
ableist employees? No, they will not.
Exactly. They never say like that. So this is
Yeah. Yeah, thank
in
you very much,
practice.
Dr. Sachin, for your great insight and sparing your valuable time for, couple of sessions. So it is very, very, like, difficult. Like, we are planning with Dr. Mary Sport. No,
Hmm.
actually, we planned for a week program. Then we thought of let it make it, otherwise it would be very tight jacket. So 10 days, and
True.
then it is very
No,
difficult
no,
to
but
get resource person. So he suggested, so two session that way become very.
no. It's just great. Congratulations to you all, the organizers, Mary sir, and to you, sir, Kalpe sir, because the way you drafted the entire program, designed the entire program. So trying touching upon all the issues, be it law, be it other. So it's really nicely done. So
So
thank
thank
you
you. And
so
that's why we
much.
are putting, thank you. And we have, that's why we are putting on YouTube also, so it can reach out.
Sprout
People are able
people.
to access. So, and then
Exactly.
at various point of time. Yes,
So
Dr. Mary
I'll
Sport, over to
suggest.
you.
I don't know you're doing it. Yeah, like I have just small suggestion that if you are doing this on YouTube, if there is possibility to get it sign language interpreter का भी थोड़ा सा part, at least in few sessions, it will
Okay,
be
okay.
more accessible.
Yeah, Dr. Mary
Sir,
Sport, you have to see that too. Yes,
sir,
over to Dr.
can
Mary
I
Sport
speak?
for final
Yeah,
word of the
Yes,
day.
somebody
somebody.
is some.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I speak? Sir,
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
please.
Kalpe sir, good evening. Sachin
Good
sir,
evening,
good
good evening,
evening.
good evening, ma'am.
Good evening,
Thanks for
ma'am.
your excellent deliberations, giving more insight about working. Sir,
I would like to say something here about these blind people. Those people who are undergoing chemotherapy, radiology, suffering from cancer, most of them have lost their sight. So, how will we deal with them? Because there are many cases, they come to me for help. But if CSR also, how we can help them? If we get funds from CSR, how we can help them? What are any regulations for them, terms and conditions for them? How to help these people? Because earlier they
So
were,
yes, Mary sir.
one of them
Yeah,
was
yes, ma'am. Please
manager
conclude.
production, and the other lady was a vice principal in apna army school. Both of them have lost their sights. They came to me for help because I am connected with DALSA and NALSA.
Yeah.
So I had no
Yes.
words to say, nothing to give them guidance about this.
Ma'am, again, Sachin sir will add. Ma'am, first of
Yes,
all,
sir.
Yes, sir.
let them get the disability certificate and
That I
Yeah,
gave them.
same thing.
That I gave them.
okay.
Hmm.
Okay, after that, what you can do, let approach the employer. Approach in return. Approach the employer. Please give me relevant job. Okay, or otherwise ask 2 3 months for taking time for learning some kind of assistive technology. Right.
Hmm.
After that, they have to given the same way. Since it is a teaching job, that will not be any issue. If there is any problem,
Mm.
ask that
Yes.
people to
Ji,
approach
sir.
concerned disability commissioner of the state.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that is
Yes,
there.
sir.
In fact, Ruby ma'am, there are these disabled, employment exchanges are
Yes,
functional
yes.
these days.
Yes, sir.
So we can get our, application registered there.
Yes, sir.
And as sir rightly pointed out, the first step is with the disability certification. And still, if we
Yes.
feel any discrimination, we should
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
write to the.
On 29 June, we have issued 200 I-cards and
Okay. Uh-huh.
Aadhaar card. They were facing difficulties. We caught hold that Tehsildar, brought him to our office. We requested that other person who was making Aadhaar card with the machine and all, laptop, everything. He said, you come and sit here and help us. If you want
Okay.
some
Okay.
payment, no, it is free. I said, free mean then you are not helping these people. Now you help. So that means it was with great difficulty we brought them.
True.
Ma'am,
True. No, that's
that's
what. No.
that's fine, ma'am.
And
Yeah.
we gave the
Go
I
ahead,
Yeah.
go
cards
ahead.
and certificates whoever wanted. But then we did not have any blind people. Only these two ladies were there. So now I will give them. Yes, sir. Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much.
Ma'am, you can give, ma'am. And please remember, there is no problem. First of all, they might be lacking the confidence. How do we go about it? Okay, to overcome come the confidence, let them learn some kind of screen reading or some kind of coping technology. Right? For that, they can
True.
take a break. 2 3 months, even they might earn the leave, so they can take the break. Again, they can rejoin. There is no problem. If there is any issues, they can approach the PWD at the agencies. That's
Hmm.
possible, ma'am.
Yeah, so
Yes,
that's
yes.
what it's more about, that inclusive, sensitive environment. I'll just share a small example, like last year they cut my 1 CL because of late punching. So here we follow this stupid system that if you're punch late, uh, like 3 bar it is allowed. So they deducted my chutti. So I wrote to them that I have my disability, I have my issues. So if you can give me some reasonable accommodation about it, but they didn't reply to that, you know. So and I wrote to the concerned authorities. So then some, but then gradually we got the vice chancellor, so things got settled. So, but like these kind of practices are there in the employment sector. So you have to fight, you have to speak up. That's the thing, you know. And people are still lack of that sensitivity. So yeah, anyways, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Sure, sure. So thank you very much, Dr. Sachin, for your insight and great support. And I'm connected to Preeti madam, so and then couple of other faculty also. Now I'm connected to you also with this, particular
Ah,
through with Dr. Mary Sport. And it was a great session. I would say great contribution in literature in towards disability laws. And I hope more and more people can read, disseminate these things. whatever we have discussed in last 10 days. So thank you very much, and I look forward to see you in future events also. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sachin.
Mary sir.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Kalpesh.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.